Today, I want to dive into life and work and many different areas that you speak about in your incredible book, Principles. And the first thing I want to dive into is these stages of life you speak about. Because when you said that to me on the phone the other day, they really resonated. Why don't you guide the audience through those different stages and phases and how you see them changing our life?
Well, I think to simplify, there are three stages in your life. The first stage in your life is when you're learning and you're dependent on others. Go to school, come out, graduate from school. It's very different from the second phase of your life, where you're working, others are dependent on you, and you're trying to be successful. And that's what largely your audience is in that early stages.
Absolutely.
So I'm so excited to speak to them. And that whole arc is totally different. Like on the first arc, first part of the life, you pretty much follow a track. What schools, parents taking care of you, whatever it is, and then what decisions do you make? You hardly make any decisions. You make, okay, what college do you go to if you go to college? Then you go to the college and what major do you have? And then you come out to this world, the second stage, in which really the whole thing is wide open to you, particularly if you don't stay on a track. And you realize that there's no instruction manual and you can go anywhere and you can do anything. And then it's a very different phase. It's a more difficult phase. And that second phase then has an arc to it. And then somewhere in the vicinity of your last phase, that's the phase where you're free to live and free to die. And your preferences change. You change. Your relationships with others change. So that's the life arc that I'm referring to. And so I'm in the transition from the end of my second phase to the beginning of my third phase. And at that phase, I just want to pass along what I've learned to help people who are early in their second phase.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right that is the majority of people that are listening and watching right now. And for me, you brought something up really interesting there. One of the biggest things is we become paralyzed by choice and decisions. Because so much of that early phase is where things were decided for us, where choices were made for us. And I often feel we bring that mindset to the second phase, where we're still looking for someone else to help tell us what to do and what decision to make and what's the right thing to do. How have you seen through your experiences, how have you dealt with choice and decision as that phase of life changes?
Well, I think, first of all, one has to know their nature. You might have to discover it. But your nature means, do you have a sense of adventure? Do you seek security? Are you an extrovert, an introvert? Those types of things. So personal discovery is important. I think that who you're with and where you are is more important than what you do. Because in the early phase of that second phase, it's total discovery. So it's experimentation. You went to India for 3 years, right?
Yes.
But if you have that sense of adventure, to let go, you can discover. That's your opportunity. But discover yourself as well as to discover what the choices are like. And then as you move later into that, you'll feel the pulls and to feel never trapped. We were talking just before we began that so many people say, I can't be that way because my job won't allow it, which is a silly concept, because you have the freedom of those choices, even when you have constraining situations. So I think that's the life arc. Enjoy this wide open choice. You can be anywhere in the world. You can do almost anything. Let go, experiment, and then move on.
Absolutely. And did you feel that same freedom when you started as well? Or do you feel it's changed now? Do you think there's more access?
In my case, when I was 12, I got hooked on trading markets. So I loved that game. So I discovered it early. And then I wanted to, but I had this sense of adventure. I discovered when I went to work at a company that working at a company was not my thing. I got fired. I punched my boss. And I really then learned the freedom. I didn't have any idea that I was setting up a company. I just sort of said, I can do these things. Probably like you. You discovered, okay, I could do those things. And then one thing leads to another. And then, you build. And I always like the variety. So my nature is macro. So I like going all over the world, all different cultures, understanding how the world works. And so I found something that clicked through that experimentation.
Yeah, and
but then there's ups and downs, right? Lots of ups and downs. So we need to talk about failure. How great failure is.
Yeah, let's do that, because I think when I'm hearing you say that, it's so refreshing. Because when I hear you saying, yeah, I had to figure it out and I was experimenting and testing and I didn't even know what I was building, I love hearing that, because that's what my experience so far has been too, as opposed to like a very rigid, strategic, not that there isn't strategy, of course there is, but something very rigid and planned. There is a lot of experimentation in that growth where failure is natural.
Yeah. My son in 2014 gave me a book, Joseph Campbell, and it was called Hero of a Thousand Faces, and it refers to the hero's journey. And this is like at the end of my experience, and I found that that's very, very true. And so there's this cycle. So a certain type of personality wants a taste for adventure. You go out and have the adventure. And then there are these ups and downs, and then you crash. You will have a failure. If you're adventurous and you're pushing the limits, you will have a failure. And that failure can be a transformative experience. I have an expression that pain plus reflection equals progress. So they call it the abyss. And change, the learning of humility, to maintain your aggressiveness, your audacity, and to simultaneously learn humility. And that happened to me. I was, you described it. I graduated from school. 2 years, I worked on Wall Street for 2 years. I got fired from my job. And 2 years later, I'm running my little company. Something like 7, 8 years after that, I made terrible mistakes in the markets. I crashed and I lost everything. And I was so broke that I had to borrow $4,000 from my dad to help pay for my family expenses. And it was publicly because I was on Wall Street Week and I made all those mistakes. And that was one of the most painful. Pain can be great because it changed my whole perspective to decision making. As I'm saying, it gave me the humility I needed to operate with my audacity. In other words, to simultaneously be bold and aggressive, and also to know that I could be careful.
Four Sigmatic is a natural superfood company that specializes in mushroom-based drinks that benefit our immunity, energy, and longevity and help us live healthier, more enhanced lives. Four Sigmatic makes a wide variety of blends, including mushroom coffee, mushroom elixirs, hot cacaos, matcha, and superfood blends. Four Sigmatic works with my always-on-the-go lifestyle because it's so quick and easy. Just tear the packet and mix with hot water. This also makes it great for travel, which is so helpful for me. One of my favorites is the coffee with lion's mane. Lion's mane mushrooms have been used by Buddhist monks to help with focus during meditation. The coffee with lion's mane promotes productivity, creativity. It's coffee without the jitters. I was initially worried about the taste, but it tastes just like coffee, not like mushrooms. And it's made with 100% organic Arabica coffee beans. I like to add a little coconut milk to mine for a creamier texture. I have a special offer just for my audience right now. You can receive 15% of your Four Sigmatic purchase. Just go to foursigmatic.com/purpose or use the discount code PURPOSE at checkout. That's Four Sigmatic, FOURSIGMATIC.com/purpose.
You know, I learned that if you're doing risky things, anybody who does risky things, tightrope walk across buildings or whatever, it's that they also know how to deal with the risks well. So how to be bold and then to learn from the failures. And it changed my whole approach to failure. I began to think of failures like puzzles, that if I could solve the puzzle, I'd get a gem. And the puzzle was, what would I do differently in the future? And the gem I would get would be a principle of how I would deal with the future differently. So understanding that if you press the limits, you're going to fail, and it's okay. And life is a long journey. Failure has a tone to it that it sounds like it's an end. No, it's part of that process of learning and then making that great advance. But the humility combined with the audacity was helpful, because then I would go to try to find the smartest people I could find who disagreed with me. That independent thinking. And I would also know how to deal with my risks better. So I kept my upside without losing my downside. So that's failure and pain. If you look at the second order effects, if you make the most of them, they're the most valuable.
Absolutely. And I love that balance that you've just spoke about, or that bringing of the two together of humility and audacity. I've never heard it like that before. And I really value that, because I can see why humility is so powerful, but not that humility stops you from having that boldness and that courage. And almost like, how have you maintained that? Because I'm guessing that being at rock bottom, like having to borrow $4,000, can be very painful. And then when you're experimenting again and going on your next adventure, you've got to be okay with the fact that that could happen again? Or was that humility holding that back, having that happen again?
I think the tightrope walker crossing the building is the example, right?
Yes.
You fall and you fall hard. Now, some people won't get on the tightrope again.
Yeah.
Some people will get on the tightrope again.
Yes.
And then they think, how do I do that? So how do I be bold and aggressive? And I pull it off. And it's the same way, right? You start to think, well, maybe I do this or that differently, and I practice more. It's that combination of the caution and practice that allows you to take it to the limits that you never would have been able to take it to before, right? I learned that. Once I learned that, everything changed. Wow. Because I also would know how to take the hits. In other words, I don't mind getting banged, but I don't want to get knocked out of the game.
Yes.
So the willingness to get banged but not knocked out of the game is a big part.